The Senate Committee on Government Affairs will come to order. Madam Secretary, please call roll.
Vice Chair Orenshaw.
Here.
Senator Goycochea.
Here.
Senator Daly.
Here.
Senator Krasner.
Here.
Chair Flores.
Present. Please let the record reflect we do have a quorum. First of all, welcome to everybody, and I apologize for the late start. We had some technical difficulties, along with the Education Committee running a little bit longer. I make that point now because I believe that that may be a common theme, and we'll try to make it work. But I do ask that you be patient, because I anticipate that often being an issue, and we'll coordinate with the Chair of Education to get me here and start as promptly as we can. Just quick housekeeping rules. I want to remind everybody, please, to silence your cell phones. I want to remind everybody that we're often working and looking at our laptops, and that's because everything you see on these screens is also available on our laptop. I want to remind members that if you prefer for paper, that you please notify either Mr. McDonald or anyone from the team, and I'll be sure that everything's printed out for you daily. I also want to remind folk, I've had an opportunity to work alongside most of you, and I look forward to continuing that relationship, particularly for those of you who will be testifying in support or opposition. I ask that you always consult with the bill sponsor prior to surprising them on the day of a bill being presented. And I think you all know that that's just proper decorum, and we work with each other and collaborate where we can and disagree where we must. But I want to remind folks to please, whenever possible, avoid surprising bill presenters on the day of and reach out to them ahead of time. With that, I also want to remind folk that who we are, who's present, and kind of give you an opportunity to hear from the members. And there's a wealth of experience here, and I think you'll agree with me. So I'd like to first, very quickly, give the members an opportunity to introduce themselves. If you could just briefly let the folk present know just how many times you've sat on this committee, if ever, a little bit about your background, who you are, the Senate district you represent, and then we'll start with our Vice Chair, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. My name is James Orenshaw. I represent State Senate District 21 down in Clark County, and very excited to be on this committee with Chair Flores and all the other members and the great staff here. I've had the opportunity to serve on this committee during the 2019 session when Senator Parks was chair, and then during the 2021 session, I was very lucky to get to serve as vice chair under Chair Tondero Loop. And I'm thrilled to get to work with you, and I've been so proud of all the different legislation you've worked on through the years. This committee affects so many of our constituents' lives in very important ways that I think a lot of folks don't realize it. And I really look forward to working on crafting good public policy with you, Chair, and with all my fellow members, Senator Daly, Senator Krasner, Senator Goycochea. Thank you.
And I'm excited to have you as a Vice Chair. Senator Daly, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Skip Daly. I represent Senate District 13 in Washoe County, parts of Sparks, parts of Reno. Served on government affairs 2 terms when I was in the Assembly, once when our chairman was the chair in that house as well. And so looking forward to the work in my previous life before I was elected as a lobbyist, spent most of my time in this committee on the issues that are in front of this committee. So looking forward to it and appreciate everybody here. Thank you.
And I'll share that few members on this committee are as excited about government affairs as Senator Daly is, as you all probably already know. Next, if we could have Senator Krasner, please.
Thank you, Chair Flores. I'm Senator Lisa Krasner. It is my honor to represent State Senate District 16. I served for 3 regular sessions and 3 special sessions in the State Assembly prior to being elected by the people to serve as their senator for State Senate District 16. This is my first time on government affairs, and I am looking forward to serving with Chair Flores and all of the other members of this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And last but not least, Senator Goycochea.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Pete Goycochea, representing Senate District 19, kind of the eastern side of the state. And I think I've been on government affairs my whole career in the Senate. I chaired it in the 2015 session, I guess 13, 15, 17, 19. Yeah, I've been here quite a while. So anyway, I came out of local government. I really enjoy government affairs, and truly we deal with the government closest to the people, and that's local government. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
And thank you, Senator. And I look forward to your knowledge and to your balanced approach and collaborating together. And same is true with Senator Krasner. Very quickly, briefly on myself, I had the privilege of serving in the Government Affairs Committee when I was first elected in 2015. And I then, afterwards in 2017, 2019, and 2021, had the honor of serving, and this is in the Assembly, to make that abundantly clear. I had the privilege of being the chair in the Assembly, both for all those three of those sessions. And I am now proudly representing Senate District 2, previously held by Senator Mo Dennis, who termed out, and my Assembly district happened to be nested into his Senate district, so it was just a natural move for me. I am honored to be here amongst you all and having an opportunity to serve you in whatever way, capacity I may. I also wanted to just very briefly let you folk know that we are hoping to work together as much as we can. Zachary, who you'll have an opportunity to meet here soon, who's my attaché, please reach out to him constantly as we have issues with bills come up. We want to collaborate and address those issues as soon as possible, but I want you to feel comfortable to reach out to me as soon as an issue is found so that we can hopefully address it prior to a hearing, and that will also help us kind of mitigate the issues of having very long hearings. Kind of in that same vein, we intend to have bill presentations, better said, the jurisdictions have some presentations before this committee while we're presenting bills. Often in what's been a tradition, at least in the Assembly, is that we had a whole host of presentations for many jurisdictions. And then afterwards, we would start the bills, and I think one of the issues we would have with that is by the time that the bill was heard, folk would forget that presentation that was done by that particular city or county. So I think it just makes more sense and it's more efficient if we try to do that simultaneously. So unlike what you're seeing happening in the Assembly, where there's a whole host of presentations happening now, you won't be seeing that here, with some exceptions to that. Also, I wanted to let folk know following that we do intend for folk to be able to participate. You don't have to be here in Carson City. For those wishing to speak in support of a bill, in opposition or neutral, you'll have an opportunity to do so by calling in. And I just wanted to make that abundantly clear. For those of you who will be presenting, it is my preference that if you have an opportunity, that you be present, although we understand that there may be scenarios where you find yourself in the East Coast or some other part of the country where that's impossible. But for the most part, we will be having folk coming to Carson City and presenting the bill here, and or any co-presenters. With that, I think it's incredibly important that you all know that obviously the committee here is very excited to be here, and we were elected to do this work, but none of this works without the staff, the amazing staff we have. I think we often say that, but it's worth repeating 1,000 more times. None of this works without the amazing human beings that are behind the scenes, making sure that regardless of who is the chair or the vice chair or the sitting member, this all works for the betterment of Nevada. So with that, I really would like for all of you to have an opportunity to hear directly from our staff. They'll be sharing a little bit of who they are, what their title is, and specifically just share the amount of experience that they bring to this committee so that you all know that the work that's happening in this committee is in good hands. So with that, I'd like to first start with our committee policy analyst, who I've had the privilege of now working with from starting in the assembly side, and I have the honor of continuing that work into the Senate. Mr. Jared McDonald, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Jared McDonald. I'm the committee policy analyst for the committee this session. I've been with the LCB for 10 years. This is my 6th session. I spent the last 4 staffing Assembly Government Affairs, and happy to be back in the Senate. I originally served in the Senate back in 2013 on transportation, so it's nice to be over here again, and looking forward to working with this committee. Thank you.
And thank you. And again, I've had the privilege of having him sit alongside of me now for the 3 sessions that I chaired in the Assembly. And I'll tell you just how much of an honor it is to know that he's again here. I feel a lot safer with that. Next, if I could please introduce you to our committee legal counsel, Ms. Heidi Clarkson.
Hi, I'm Heidi Clarkson. I've been with the Legal Division of the Legislative Council Bureau since 2003. I have staffed the Senate Government Affairs Committee since 2009, so I think this is my 8th session staffing the committee, and I'm just very excited to be back. Thank you.
And thank you for being here with us. Next, I'd like to introduce you to our committee manager, Linda Drew.
Hello, my name is Linda Drew, and this is my 8th session. It's my 2nd time with Senate Government Affairs. And if you need me, my number's on the website.
And thank you, Linda. And next, if I could introduce you to our committee secretaries, Suzanne Effords and Spencer Jones, whoever wishes to go first.
Hello, everyone. I'm Suzanne Efford. I'm the committee secretary. I retired from state service after 30 years, and this will be my 8th session and my 5th session with Government Affairs.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Spencer Jones, Committee Secretary for Government Affairs. This will be the 3rd state legislature I've worked with, and I've done bill tracking and policy analysis on and off since 2015. Glad to be here.
And thank you, Spencer. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce you, as I previously mentioned, to my attaché, who will be directly in charge of ensuring that the calendar and everything, any other type of communication needed with me, flows as smoothly as possible. So please, Mr. Zachary Khan.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the committee, good afternoon. My name is Zachary Khan. I am, as the Chair said, his attaché, legislative aide. Bulk of my working experience is in the political world, the campaign world, but I'm very lucky and honored to be here to serve with him once again in a nonpartisan fashion. I had the pleasure of working with him as a committee secretary last session while he was chair of government affairs, and followed him over. So yeah, let's do this again, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. I think you'll all agree with me that he is the most relaxed human being in this building, and that's a good thing. We need that energy. So the first order of business is for us to adopt the committee rules. The committee rules are available on Nellis for those of you who have not had an opportunity to see those. But before I do that, I just remembered that I forgot to acknowledge that there's also a whole host of individuals who are making sure that this works via the internet. And I just wanted to thank them and over the phone because as you all saw, right before the meeting started, we were having some technical difficulties. None of this works. And now this building is more accessible than ever, consequence to us having that accessibility with technology. And that's thanks to all our folk who are working behind the scenes. So I just wanted to do a quick shout out to them and say thank you. Now, if I could come back just to our first order of business, which is to adopt the committee rules. The rules are available on Nellis. The policies are consistent with the Senate rules, but also contain a few policies that are unique to the Senate Government Affairs Committee. And I just wanted to very quickly give everybody an opportunity to review those. If you haven't had an opportunity to do so, I want to say that everybody has already reviewed them. But if there's any questions, this would be the time to raise those now. Seeing none. Yes.
Oh, Mr. Chair, I wonder if you'd accept a motion.
Oh, understood. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the committee policies.
Thank you, Chair. Move adoption.
Vice Chair has made the motion to adopt the committee policies. Do I have a second? Senator Goycochea has seconded that. Members, any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those against say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Next, I'd like to move on to the presentation of the committee brief. If you've had an opportunity to review that, members, I think there is a lot of really important information in it. And at this point, I'd like to hand it over to our committee policy analyst to review it.
Thank you, Chair. The committee policy brief is available by the table, by the back door there, and has also been made available to the committee members and is on Nellis. I think you've all heard this presentation a few times already, so I'll try to give you the condensed version. For those folks that are not familiar with the committee's policy brief, it contains information about the committee, including session deadlines, anticipated bill volume, anticipated topics, committee jurisdiction, relevant research, and population classifications. During the 2021 session, this committee received 108 measures. 86 of those were voted out of the committee, and 78 were passed and sent to the governor, and one bill, SB 254, was vetoed. In reviewing the volume of bills referenced to this committee over the last 10 years, the most that it ever received was 142. So quite a bit more than was referred last session, so there can be quite a bit of variation from session to session. As of last Thursday, the committee had been referred 25 pre-filed bills. As of today, we're up to 28. And in Appendix A, we have a listing of the bills that were pre-filed and were available last week, if you'd like to take a look at those. Taking a look at the pre-filed bills and the BDR list, some of the topics you can expect to see in this committee this session include apprenticeships, confidentiality of personal information, emergency management, military and veteran issues, open meeting law, prevailing wage, public records, public works, a lot of the topics that typically come before this committee. As you all know, the Senate Committee on Government Affairs has broad oversight of state and local government administration and structure. Overall, the committee has jurisdiction over approximately 124 chapters in 18 titles. Those titles and chapters are defined in Rule 40 of the Senate Standing Rules and includes such topics as state executive department, counties, cities, public officers, public works, public borrowing, military affairs and civil emergencies, and veterans issues. In addition to legislative audits and various reports required of the executive branch, the Research Division also produces a number of useful publications that you may like to receive a copy of. Those include the State of Nevada Major Elected Officers, the Directory of State and Local Government, and the Nevada State Government Organizational Chart. The last piece I'd like to discuss is the population tables. We have the 2020 population tables contained in Appendix C, and these have been updated since the last time. It includes populations for cities and counties. So when you're reviewing legislation or previous or existing statute, and you see that it references the size of a city or county, these tables will help you determine which jurisdictions or entities are being referenced in those measures. To wrap up, the mission of the Research Division is to serve in a professional and nonpartisan manner, and the division is available to provide the committee and its members with assistance on any issue related to matters that come before the committee. Additionally, the division provides individual members of the legislature with information on assistance and on a confidential basis on any topic. Barring any questions or comments, that concludes my review of the committee brief. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. At this point, I'd like to move over into the 3 bill presentations that we have today. We will take them in the order they appear. I would like to take an opportunity to let folk know that bill presenters will be asked to bring exhibits, if they have any, in a physical form that will be provided by the entry to the committee. They will be there every day that we have a hearing. As you know, we meet on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. It is my intent that at minimum, during the beginning, that we focus on meeting Mondays and Wednesdays, as I understand that a lot of folk often have flights to catch, families to take care of. So we'll try to be as respectful as we can to that. What that also means is, because we have a lot of bills, that means we're going to be stacking the days. So be prepared when necessary for us to have long hearings on Mondays and Wednesdays, and that will be in the spirit of allowing us to keep Friday open. In addition to that, I also just wanted to remind folk, as we're presenting bills, often we have to take bills out of order. That's done for a host of reasons, either because a presenter is unavailable and or in another committee room. So we will try to consistently take them in the order they appear in the agenda, but at times we won't be able to do that. Also, I want to remind folk, any single time you come up to present a bill, that you state your name for the record after each question. Any time you commence to speak, if you state your name for the record, that makes the lives of our staff a lot easier. At times, we'll ask you to spell your name just to make the record abundantly clear. We will typically, after the bill presentation, as is a custom, ask questions to the bill presenter, followed by testimony and support, opposition, and then neutral. We'll start always with folk who are present in the room, and then we'll move up to anybody who may be on the phone calling in. And with that said, I'd like to open up the hearing on Senate Bill 2, which revises provisions relating to emergency management. Good afternoon and welcome. Whenever you're ready, please.
Good afternoon, committee chair, members, and guests. For the record, Melissa Friend, Emergency Management Program Manager for the Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security. I'm here to testify in support of Senate Bill 2. The State Disaster Identification Coordination Committee, SDICC, was added to NRS in 1997, revised after the tragedy of 1 October and again in 2021, in the efforts to streamline the reunification and identification of victims during an emergency, disaster, public health emergency, or other health event. In the 2021 revision, some of the law was redacted through miscommunications in agency conversations with external partners. SB 2 seeks to add some language that was removed in error as it pertains to the information sharing between agencies. SB 2 also adds language protecting any member of the SDICC from civil action in the disclosure of information done in good faith. The division is aware of a friendly amendment submitted by Clark County. The division has been in contact with Clark County and is in support of that addendum. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Senator Daley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of things on the clarifications where it refers to a political subdivision. So I looked in the statute and found where that's defined in your statute. And it says a city or a county. And I know oftentimes Carson cities, I guess they're a county, and sometimes maybe they're not. I'm not sure their legal distinction, or if your definition maybe needs to include Carson City in different reference. I know in a lot of other areas of law, it'll say including every county and Carson City. I don't know if that matters to you yet. And then looking at this list on the population of the cities, and referred to the cities, so it covers all of the charter cities, and I'm assuming the general law cities. So if they're not one of those two, so towns, various things, and then how does that definition of political subdivision include some of the tribes and various things in that category. So I just think it's a definition problem that's not in your bill. I'm just curious if you guys have any comments on that.
John Backetall, for the record, I'm the Deputy Administrator at DEM, and correlating with your question, the political subdivision primarily relates to the 17 counties, which Carson City would be included as a county, but it can also translate down to the incorporated cities, as well as the tribal nations can opt into any one of our available programs, including this particular with the SDICC, to have availability through coroner use, as well as the 2 medical examiners at either end of the state.
And if I can, Mr. Chair.
Please.
And I understand what you're saying is that they can opt in various things. I'm just saying the way the statute is written, it refers to state or political subdivisions, and then you have a specific definition. So I don't know how you're getting to the rest of them based on that. Maybe you have a process that allows them to, but I just didn't see that in the statute. And I have a second question on a different area after the answer.
John Backetall, for the record again. So we formally recognize the 17 counties as our political jurisdictions, and then within the counties, those cities can work through the counties to get to us. So the primary definition would be for the 17 counties.
I'm just saying in 414.038, it defines a political subdivision as a city or a county, and that's it.
John Backetall, for the record again. That's correct, sir.
I don't know how you get to the tribal councils. I don't know if you go down any lower than incorporate or charter or general law cities. It would include Shures. I don't see Shures on the deal as a general law city. So Shures would also have the tribal relationship there as well. It's just not in your definition.
John Backetall, for the record again. That is correct. With the tribal nations being sovereign, they're not included into all of our direct statutes and regulations. They are able to access any one of our programs, any one of our statutes through the county emergency manager to which their seat may sit, as well as we do have 2 tribal liaisons that work directly with all of the tribes to incorporate any needs they may have, including with the SDICC processing committee.
Okay. Other question? Or?
Please.
Yeah. So the second question, I got to find the part that I'm looking for. And it was regarding to the confidentiality, and I understand, and I remember, I think one of these bills in 19 when it was changed, there was some stuff that was added to it regarding the confidentiality, and a little bit in 21. I wasn't there, but I remember trying to make sure that people are not, if they inadvertently disclose some information in these emergency type situations, that they're not going to be held liable. But I think the language is in there. It's except as provided otherwise in 414.280. And I'm not seeing what is provided otherwise in 418. I don't understand that reference. Because I don't see anything in 418.280 that makes any of it public there at all. Or am I reading it incorrectly? I could be, but that's why I asked the question.
I heard most of what you said, but I'm sorry, the very last sentence, I didn't quite catch everything you said. Could you repeat that, please?
Sure. So when I was reading the bill, and it says, except as provided otherwise in 414.280, this information is confidential. And when I go and look at 414.280, when I read that, I don't see where any reference, I don't understand the reference in the bill, except as provided otherwise. When you get to 414.280, everything's confidential there as well, is the way I read it. So I'm not understanding the except as provided otherwise portion of the language.
I'd have to get back with you on that. This is John Backetall, for the record.
Thank you. Members, any additional questions? Vice Chair, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. And as I'm looking at page 3 of the bill, section 2, I guess my question is, if there's this emergency or something like the pandemic, and I'm actually at line 34 where they talk about sharing information regarding persons who appear to have been injured or killed. For the folks who survived and weren't killed but were injured, would there need to be any HIPAA waivers for their information to be shared? I understand you're trying to reunify folks with their loved ones, and maybe for the folks who didn't survive, trying to make sure there's proper burial. But is that a concern, or is that already taken care of in terms of sharing information about injuries or contracting an illness during the emergency?
John Backetall for the record again. So any survivor, we would have to follow the HIPAA rules out there as they're stated currently. If someone were to have passed, then HIPAA would not be in place for those individuals. And you're absolutely correct. It is in regards to the reunification purposes, to which we would not need their medical information. It would be more of their name and location to associate that through law enforcement with the reunification center, wherever that may be.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice. And before we move on to any other questions, Senator Daley had asked about Section 5, page 7, specifically lines 19 and 20 regarding the except as otherwise provided NRS 414. I believe our committee counsel may have an answer to his question.
Thank you. For the record, this is Heidi Clarkson with the Legislative Council Bureau. So I think the exception that is referred to in Section 5 is so that if you look at Section 1 of the bill, which also amends NRS 414.280, on page 3 of the bill, starting in line 1, it does allow for the information to be shared upon request of a political subdivision. So I think in drafting, we wanted to make it clear in Section 5 that there is, generally the information is confidential. However, there is an exception in NRS 414.280 so that certain information can be shared upon request of the political subdivision. And that, I think, is what Senator Daley, you were asking about.
And thank you for that clarification. Members, any additional questions? Senator Krasner, please.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. And I apologize if you already answered this. Does this apply to an emergency such as COVID? Yes or no?
So John Backetall for the record again, yes, it would. So any one of our stated emergencies or disasters that would impact people that need to either be identified or reunified, it would be used in any one of those cases upon the request of the jurisdiction.
Thank you. And does it only apply to emergencies or other, I mean, if there was a statewide gonorrhea outbreak, would that constitute an emergency where information would need to be shared amongst counties?
John Backetall for the record again. So that would not be in our authority unless there was a state or federal declaration. That would fall back on public health. So different agency, different set of regulations.
Thank you.
And thank you, Senator. Members, any additional questions? Seeing none, at this time I'd like to invite those wishing to speak in support of Senate Bill 2 to please come forward. Good afternoon, welcome. If you could please state your name for the record.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Cadence Matievich, and I have the privilege of representing Washoe County. We are here to voice our support for the bill. As you heard, it would assist in reunification and identification in emergencies and disasters, and our emergency management and our medical examiner's office have indicated that this would be helpful for them in those efforts. We also understand that there is an amendment coming from Clark County, and we are in support of that as well.
Thank you. And I don't believe we have any questions for you. Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak in support of Senate Bill 2? Seeing none in Carson City, we'll go to Las Vegas, but I believe the room is vacant. But I just want to make it abundantly clear, we are in support. Seeing none there, we'll go to the phones. Do we have anybody wishing to speak in support of Senate Bill 2 on the phone?
Thank you, Chair. Your public line is open and working, and you have no callers at this time.
Thank you. At this time, we'd like to invite those wishing to speak in opposition to Senate Bill 2. And we'll start with Carson City. Please. I'm sorry. I said Carson City. I meant taking testimony here in Carson City. Please, whoever wishes to go first.
Good afternoon, Chair Flores. This is Joanna Jacob. I'm the Government Affairs Manager for Clark County, and I apologize for the delay. I'm in opposition just under strict application of the rules, and that we're proposing a change to the bill because we are proposing the friendly amendment. Our thanks to the State Department of Emergency Management. We did speak with Chief Fogerson last night. And largely, Clark County Fire, our emergency management is a regional service. We are all in support of the intent of this bill. The coroner's office was added because they are also a first responder, and we certainly saw that. The coroner's office saw it when we were responding to 1 October. We had families showing up at the coroner's office trying to find their loved ones. Any clarification that could be added that would permit this limited location and name information that we can help respond for our community is very much needed and appreciated. I will also note UMC was also supportive of this bill because we do the government affairs for UMC as well. So largely supportive and just here to propose the friendly amendment. Thank you very much.
Please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. My name is Vincent Guthrow. I serve as the Executive Director for NACO, the Nevada Association of Counties. Sort of a me too to Joanna Jacobs' testimony. We're not really opposed, but under the rules, supportive of the friendly amendment. We think this clarifying language in the amendment provides flexibility to our counties to unify, especially when responding to mass tragedy events or anything that may impact their community. So, thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Seeing none, thank you again. And we are still in opposition to Senate Bill 2. Anybody wishing to come forward? Seeing none in Carson City, we'll go to Las Vegas, but again, I believe the room was vacant and we have no one there. At this time, we'd like to go to the phone. Anybody wishing to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 2 over the phone?
Chair, your public line is open and working, and you have no callers at this time.
Thank you. And lastly, we'll invite those wishing to testify in the neutral position for Senate Bill 2. Seeing none here, we'll go to Las Vegas. And lastly, to our phones. Is there anybody wishing to speak in neutral?
You have no callers at this time.
Thank you. Again, thank you for the presentation. At this time, we'll go ahead and close the hearing on Senate Bill 2. And next, I'd like to open the hearing on Senate Bill 3, which revises the membership of the Nevada Commission on Homeland Security. Welcome back, and whenever you're ready, please.
Good afternoon, Chairman, committee members, and guests. For the record, John Backetall. I'm the Deputy Administrator at the Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, and I'm here to testify in support of Senate Bill 3. Senate Bill 3 addresses the membership of the Nevada Commission on Homeland Security, which is chaired by the governor. The commission was created by the Nevada Legislature in 2003 to establish a group to provide advice and counsel to the governor on Homeland Security, to coordinate Nevada Homeland Security concerns, and recommend funding for the Homeland Security Grant Program. In 2021, the legislative session, DEM was transferred to the from the Department of Public Safety to the Office of the Military. When this happened, the seat on the commission that was designated for the Department of Public Safety and the Division of Emergency Management was retained by our agency, DEM. So what we're looking for in this particular bill request is to have the Department of Public Safety be assigned a member or an employee of their department to the Commission on Homeland Security inside of NRS 239C.120. This has been discussed, agreed upon, and supported with the Department of Public Safety. And so I'll end there and ask if you have any questions.
And thank you for your presentation. Members, questions on Senate Bill 3. Senator Daley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I understood what your testimony was that before the transfer, there was a person from the Department of Public Safety on the board.
John Backetall for the record, that's correct. It was agency underneath the department, so the Department of Public Safety Division of Emergency Management had the seat inside of the commission.
And my question on today's bill is it just says an employee of the Department of Public Safety, and I'm going, no criteria, it seems pretty broad. Was there any criteria on that before? Because many of the other appointees that are on there, are, fire department and county over 100,000, there's an inherent assumed base of knowledge or capability to be in that position, but just any employee just seems overly broad to me. Is that how it was worded before, or is there a criteria that would be looked at? None is required, apparently. The governor can pick the secretary of some office as long as they work for the Department of Public Safety. So is there a criteria that we don't know about, or was there one before?
I appreciate the question, Senator. This is John Backetall again for the record. So it was left openly vague at the discussions back and forth between the Department of Public Safety and our agency. So they could choose if it was going to be a member from any one of the agencies they have, from their Nevada Threat Analysis Center or parole and probation, or it may be a member from the Division of Investigations. So it was left vague enough to where the department director could appoint the appropriate person based upon the staffing that they have to be the member on that commission.
Follow.
Bless you.
You know I have one. Thank you. So I understand that there's a bunch of people in the Department of Public Safety that potentially could be on here if there's only going to be one. But wouldn't you want to put, a department head or a division, a deputy, somebody with at least a criteria experience to pick from? Or you would say from an employee, the governor will select from an employee that's recommended, something along those lines. I know you have it intentionally vague here, but it seems a little overly broad for me.
John Backetall for the record. I appreciate the question. And for your awareness, I'm in agreement with you and that it would be better to have a little more tie down to maybe it's as an appointee of the director of the department to have it notified that that higher level is appointing it. With the public safety perspective, those individuals in their response worlds, the position itself may not be what we want to tie to the chair seat itself, because it could be someone with a lot more experience in another agency or at another level within the agency. So allowing that threshold of the director to have the designee of the appointee to be on that committee would be very appropriate.
Thank you. Members, any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you again for the presentation. At this time, we'll invite those wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 3. Seeing none in Carson City, we'll go to Las Vegas. Hearing none, we'll go to the phones.
Chair, your public line is open and working, and you have no callers at this time.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite forward anybody wishing to speak in opposition to Senate Bill 3. Seeing none in Carson City, we'll go to Las Vegas. Hearing none, if we can go to the phones.
You have no callers this time.
And lastly, anybody wishing to speak in the neutral position for Senate Bill 3. Seeing none in Carson City and Las Vegas, we'll go to the phones.
Chair, you have no callers at this time.
Thank you. And lastly, any closing remarks on Senate Bill 3? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Senate Bill 3. And we'll move to Senate Bill 5, which authorizes the Division of Emergency Management in the Office of the Military to use money in the Emergency Assistance Account for certain additional purposes. Whenever you're ready, welcome back.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee members, and guests. For the record, Jared Franco, Chief Financial Officer from the Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, and I am here to testify in support of Senate Bill 5. The Emergency Assistance Account was created during the 1997 legislative session as a sub-account within the Disaster Relief Account, or DRA, and was subsequently incorporated into a law as Nevada Revised Statute Chapter 414.135. In addition, regulations were developed and adopted into Nevada Administrative Code Chapter 414. NRS 414 establishes the Division of Emergency Management and provides DEM with the authority to administer the EAA. The funds in this account are to be used to provide supplemental emergency assistance to state and local governments that are severely and adversely affected by a natural, technological, or man-made disaster. Additionally, these funds are available to assist DEM with the administrative costs associated with managing an emergency or disaster. This bill request will clean up the language to ensure there is no confusion on the authority of the budget account, so the appointed authority with communication to the governor's office has the rightful authority to be able to cover any expenditures incurred pre, during, and post-emergency or disaster, without the need for a declaration or emergency. Many incidents do not even rise to the level of a declaration, but still have incurred costs that need to be covered by the EAA. Also, I'd like to add, there has been a similar BDR submitted by the Interim Healthcare Committee, BDR 36335. And when that BDR is produced into a bill, we would like to work with them for best language and possibly dropping one of the bills to ensure we are coordinated in our efforts. That's the end of my report, and I'll entertain any questions.
And thank you for giving us the heads up on that duplicate effort. Members, any questions? Senator Daley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't want to disappoint, so. So I understand in the Section 1, Sub 3, Subsection C is the new language in the bill. So I just looking for an example of the types of expenses or the situation that comes up where there's not an actual disaster or declared emergency and all that kind of stuff, where you incur expenses. So I'm trying to get an example in where the guardrails are without some explanation, and I know the language is there. You know, a creative person could justify just about anything and use that expenses from training to buying new equipment that, you know, might be used or is unrelated, really. So I'm just curious what examples you might be able to give and where the guardrails are on for the purpose the money was intended.
Absolutely, Senator. Thank you for your question. Jared Franco, for the record. I think the most recent example would be when an escaped convict that was convicted of a quadruple murder was escaped from prison, and we were requested, the guard was requested through us to use their helicopter to search for that convict. In that instance, obviously our administrator, Dave Foguson, worked with the governor's office to get approval to pay for the National Guard with the EAA. Obviously, that's not an incident that will rise to the level of a declaration, but considered the purpose of emergency management to use that account.
Please follow up.
So is there a process, or you had to request the ability to use that from somebody? So under this, you wouldn't have to request, or so like I say, who would make the decision that it's okay? I mean, obviously, during session finance, you know, they put so much money in there, they've told you what you can use it for. You have interim finance if there's some things that go over and various things. So how would this decision be made? And then where's the check and balance, if you will, is what I'm looking for. Not that I think anyone's going to do anything nefarious. It's just sometimes when the language is there, you know, human nature being what human nature is, I'm skeptical always.
Absolutely, Senator. Jared Franco, for the record, thank you for your question. So this language would put the authority into the appointed authority administrator's hands. Obviously, the administrator would work with the governor's office before spending any of the money on potential emergency or incident. As you know, the EA is comprised of a small amount of interest from the disaster relief account, and on average, it's only about $150,000 every fiscal year. Does that answer your question, Senator?
I think so. I just wanted to make sure there was a review somewhere, and that, and I understand it's relatively speaking small dollars, but you just wanted to make sure that it gets to where it's supposed to be. And the example you gave, perfectly legitimate, and I think most people would understand and agree, as long as there's a review process. And obviously, if you went over anything, you'd have to go and get a program through IFC or something like that. So.
Jared Franco, for the record, can I add something to that as well? So every quarter, the IFC requires us to also submit a report of the funds that was used out of the EAA account, and basically the expenses incurred and the balance left every single quarter throughout the fiscal year, which is also checks and balance for that account.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think that was what I was looking for. So yeah, that answers the question. So there is the oversight and the checks and balances, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Daly. Members, any additional questions? Yes, Senator Goycochea, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and more of a comment than a question, but you know, I assume, or at least I hope, this $250,000 emergency account is just for what it is. You get to, you can respond to a call and an emergency. I know in the past, yeah, you'll send a helicopter flight to investigate an incident, and truly that's what this is all about. The fund is there. You can go out, service the incident, and come back and not worry about paying for it. We'll argue about who pays for it and was it legitimate in the end. Very good program, and I know in the past EM's done a great job with it. You have to be able to order an action without waiting for 3 days later, and we finally get around to everybody acts on it. So I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
And thank you, Senator. Members, any additional questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you for the presentation. At this time, I'll invite anybody wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 5 to please come forward. Seeing nobody in Carson City, we'll go to Las Vegas. Seeing no one in Las Vegas, I'd like to invite anybody wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 5 over the phone.
Chair, your line is open and working, and you have no callers at this time.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite anybody wishing to speak in opposition to Senate Bill 5. Seeing none in Carson City or Las Vegas, we'll go to the phone.
Chair, you have no callers at this time.
Thank you. And lastly, I'd like to invite anybody wishing to speak in the neutral position for Senate Bill 5. Seeing none in Las Vegas or Carson City, anyone on the phone?
Chair, you have no callers at this time.
Thank you. And at this time, any closing remarks for Senate Bill 5? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Senate Bill 5. Thank you for presenting all three bills. I do want to recognize some folk who are here before we move on to public comment. I see that we have some human beings who have served our country, and I think it's worthy of us recognizing you and saying thank you for your service and joining us today. We often have an opportunity and privilege to work alongside of you, and I intend to continue that relationship. So thank you for your service, and thank you for being here. With that, I'd like to open it up for public comment. We will be doing public comment at the end of each meeting. So I know some folk sometimes do it at the beginning, but we will continue with the tradition of doing it at the end. And I also wanted to remind folk that at times it may be difficult for you to participate either because you're working or there may be a conflict, you can always submit testimony in writing, and our amazing team will make sure that that information is uploaded and the committee members receive it so that we can review anything you may have in writing, either in support or opposition of a particular matter. At this time, I'd like to open it up for public comment. I want to remind folk that this is an opportunity to speak about general matters that fall within the purview of this committee. It's not an opportunity to speak about just anything. And we would like to restrict the conversation to 2 minutes. Is anybody here for public comment in Carson City? Seeing none, I also don't believe we have anybody for public comment in Las Vegas. Anybody for public comment over the phone?
Chair, your line is open and working, and you have no callers at this time.
Thank you. And with that, I want to remind everybody that we will not be meeting this Friday. Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday. And again, thank you all for being here. Thank you to our amazing staff, and I look forward to a very productive session with all you. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.